Hello guys, today I'm going to be talking to you about the top 5 Affinity tips that I can give you an Affinity photo for your productivity. Now I'll be overlaying the aforementioned tips on your screen while I mention them, me using them, and then it'll slowly fade back to me. Now, let's get into it. Now, the first tip I want to talk to you about is layer masking. Layer masking is a much more efficient way of erasing away or adding in different parts of images. They are overall very useful for blending two images together because you can selectively add in a mask and take away bits or add in bits of other photos, which is really cool in my opinion. So for instance, like a very cool one would be you take photos of two different images of the same spot, one at night, one in the day, and you can blend in, for instance, the sky onto that image, like the initial image. So one during the sunny time, one during the night time. You blend in the sky and you will get that immediate weird contrasting effect. I've never tried it actually, I should try it. So yeah, try it out. Try taking photos of different versions of the same spot. Affinity, the actual like Affinity account, made a really good video about this, where he showed a railway and the layer, the original layer of a light trail going left and the overlay going right, and he overlaid the light trail so they go both into the leading lines, which I will link to here. Now go support their channel and definitely check out that video if you're interested into using Affinity masks. Yeah. Now my second tip is definitely going to be live filters. Live filters is probably the best of any circumstantial way of applying a non-destructive way of adding a filter layer. This is really useful for things like clarity layers in which you want to be adding in a clarity layer specifically, and you'll be going back to the layer later to change the steps or change the actual values of it. That is very useful for that, because obviously if you apply a clarity layer filter in the standard destructive way, then you'll not be able to use that layer anymore for if you want to go back to the smooth version, or if you want to increase the clarity. For instance, if you put a curves contrast on and the clarity is no longer there, it is extremely useful for things that you might not want destructive on your photo. Things like color filters, or things like filters with distortion, where you don't have to go Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. You can just click on the layer, it's classified as a layer mask, but it's a filter layer, of course, and then delete it or change it whatever you want. Now, my third tip is definitely going to be using the different Affinity personas to your liking. Now, Photoshop unfortunately doesn't have personas, which is kind of sad. They usually kind of sort of do. Certain filter effects will give you a persona of like adjusting the effect. It will give you a little mini version of the actual photo and the active adjustments. However, in Affinity, you can have tone. There's tone mapping, which is for HDR and claritying. Well, claritying, like adding clarity to images, usually HDR will be for multiple images. There is a sort of trick you can do where you can HDR one image, however it involves you to take the image in a low exposure at like in the actual initial image. You have to like reduce the exposure of the image. Now there is also developing persona, which is for camera raws. There's liquify persona, and there's export persona. Export persona is for those finishing touches, anything added like contrast. Developing persona is extremely useful. It is a complete raw persona, in which case you can add different touching effects embedded into the raw file, which is, yes, it does do some processing on the actual raw image. However, it is a lot better than layer adjustments because it is adapting it into the image rather than just adding a overlay on the image. Obviously, Affinity in 1.8 got the ability to develop Canon RAW 3, which is definitely a massive selling point. So, my fourth tip has to be macros, and key bindings. Key bindings and macros are probably the most useful features of any software. That also includes like any Adobe Suite software, any Serif Affinity software, literally any software, including video games. They are key bindings to specific tasks like Control-Z, Control-Y. Obviously, Control-Z is undo, Control-Y is redo. I would suggest that you take a look in your macro settings to see what kind of settings you can do and what you can change in those. Obviously, you can actually map some of them to your mouse, which is what I've done, which heavily improves your productivity and your just general happiness. It's so annoying when you have to like move your cursor like 7 miles to the top right hand corner of your screen just because that little apply button is there. It's a bit stupid. And then also macros. Macros are specific presets of different adjustment layers or different channel layers or anything like that. You can learn a lot about macros. To be honest, you can't explain macros in like a complex video. Like even specific macro like videos you can find can't go into so much detail because they will be like hours long. Basically, there are specific presets, like color adjustments to make it like a cyan hue over the top of it, or like shadow adjustments or clarity adjustments. I would definitely recommend checking out macros from like other YouTubers from Affinity that use Affinity, and also I think Affinity made one, but I'm not sure if they did. Now, my fifth and final tip of top 5 tips for Affinity users has to be have fun. Affinity, Photoshop, all those different softwares, have fun. It's no use editing, graphic design, that also includes things like actual work use and things that are, just hobby, like photography editing. Don't do it when you're all dried up and you've lost your creativity for the day. We all have our own, ideas on how we can, actually focus on a task. After a while, it becomes boring doing the same thing over and over again. Looking and stopping yourself from burning out is probably the best thing you can do to make quality work in Affinity or in any other software designing apps, even for things like video game development, even things for cinematography development, even photography. if you don't feel like it, you won't take good photos. I remember I went out on a good day, it was happy, it was great, and I got like, I think it was 2,000 RAWs. I had to swap my memory cards because mine is 64 gig, and I had to swap between all three of them because obviously, like on a long day out, you usually do have a couple of spares. And then I also went down my track on the day before I did a track photo. Like, I went down the track, get some nice photos, and then on the other day, all I wanted to do was just walk and, like, you know, have a nice walk, get in the site. I took 3 photos, and they weren't even good photos. I couldn't use them. One was my actual like adjustment photo for like things like adjusting my aperture, shutter speed, and ISO for the day. Obviously, it changes day by day if you are going out at different times. Yeah, I usually do that for like the color balance as well, getting it right. But like, I took 3 photos and I just didn't have fun. So choose your days wisely. Don't burn yourself out. And that is probably the best tip anybody could ever give you about anything. Don't overdo anything. Simple. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully check out my channel. I will be posting hopefully fortnightly to weekly. And yeah, thank you guys. See you in the next one.